Well, look, we'll kick off, everyone, and thank you very much for joining me and Chuck here today. It's wonderful. My name is Scott Austin from 4impact, and today we're looking at reducing loss, reducing theft, and reducing downtime through the Aware Innovations RFID-driven asset and inventory management solution. So from that perspective, I'd like to start by welcoming you. My name is Scott Austin. I'm a veteran of the RFID and automatic data capture world, and I'm hosting this webinar today, and hopefully one of many more webinars in the world of IoT and RFID and how that can bring value to you in the supply chain and logistics world. My guest today is a gentleman who I have worked closely with over a number of years as the chair of the AIM, which is the Association for Automatic Identification and Mobility. Chuck, welcome. And Chuck has an esteemed background. He sits on a number of automatic data capture, RFID and IoT standards and bodies in the United States, and on global ISO standard bodies as well, and also is the founder and CEO of Aware Innovations. And I must declare that I also sit on the board of AIM with Chuck, and it was through that association that I became extremely excited by the products that Aware Innovations are bringing to the US market. And upon my return to Australia, I also felt that Australians should benefit from such technology. So what we're looking at here today is the Item Aware solution. And essentially, it's quite a strong product for the asset management area, utilizing a number of identifiers, whether it's a barcode, QR code, or indeed RFID technology. The key strength of the package, however, is its use of RFID, and it gives us the capability to see in real time what's happening with assets, both from a fixed location perspective in a warehouse or in an office building such as IT equipment, or indeed in a vehicle, so that we have mobile asset management. From that perspective, it really is exciting for high-level assets to be tracked and for you to prevent the loss of these assets in a vehicle, which happens so often. In emergency vehicles, for example, it gets left on site, tools are left on site after an incident, and those tools can be expensive. Service vehicles in the electronic space can also be expensive to lose. Even if we look at some of the mining and other tools used in that area, those tools alone can be valued at 10, 15, 20,000 Australian dollars. So in that regard, the solution itself is a great way of preventing those losses, saving money overall, and having real-time view over the assets. But what we might do is give the audience a brief overview by playing the short video. So that was very short and sweet, but essentially what it shows is an array of antennas and RFID readers configured on a vehicle that essentially enable us to have that transparency. The view that we're seeing now is the view that the management console provides to users to see where those assets are. So not only can a person driving a vehicle look at the iPad on the dash to see if all assets are on board before they drive off, the management of those vehicles can be managed through a central console back at head office. So from that perspective, we're able to drill down on GPS. We're able to see if tools are in the right location, on the right truck, or indeed they could be not on the truck. So there can be communications with the vehicle to say, hey, don't drive off. You haven't got all the assets on board. The other action there can be that the assets are indeed on board a vehicle managed by the company, but maybe on the wrong vehicle. So from that inventory management perspective, you can have a situation where downtime is not occurring. You know the assets are there and you know where they are on which vehicle. And so from a readiness perspective for the next event or the next job, you can manage that asset and move it back to the right vehicle that it belongs to. So from that perspective, we can really utilize the RFID technology to optimize that locational management of those assets, which is a big thing. And from our perspective, the next screen really shows the display in the vehicle. So when a driver jumps into the vehicle, they're able to see what's on board, what's not on board through the thumbs down and rectify that before they drive off. And that's an exciting position to have for that driver. It certainly makes them feel a lot more at ease when it comes to managing the higher value assets on board. And as you can see by the screen, all the vehicles in the fleet are managed through this central console. Now, from an engineering perspective, when we configure a vehicle, we're actually first of all, applying RFID tags to the assets. RFID tags come in many shapes and sizes, and certainly in a label format for simple assets, in more rugged formats for assets that will be exposed to some abuse along the way, and indeed on metal substrates. So from that metal perspective, RFID has a particular way in which it needs to be treated or shielded, insulated from the metal to support the reading of the product at distance. What we also do is we configure the vehicle to have an RFID reader on board with a multiplexer or a number of feeds to different antennas located in different locations. That could be different toolboxes, tool trays, or it could be indeed coming from an open tray perspective where we're seeing all assets in the tray, which is great.
You saw the key screens, and the key takeaway is that one of the things we want to talk about is how we alert, right? And so for each asset, group of assets, however you want to group them, which we all do in the system settings by, asset types, grouping things like all the line blocks in one group as blocks or crimpers or some other tool like power tools. That way you can alert when certain things happen that you don't want to happen, or be notified of things when they move and whatever.
Yeah.
And as Scott said, the driver has that display in the dash of the vehicle and can see clearly he either does or doesn't have what he's supposed to have, even before leaving your yard to go out, as Scott would tell me, out into the wild blue yonder, right out there in the outback.
You got it. But tell me some of these examples that we've got on the screen at the moment. Can you give us some insights to the real value propositions from those companies?
Absolutely.
And some of the idiosyncrasies around the deployment?
Absolutely. So Concurrent Electric was our very first pilot. And so let me give you some background on Itemware as a software package. We are an IT company, and we had been doing work for the U.S. government, and we'd been putting in other people's software. And with our expertise in automatic identification technologies and software development, my team came to me and said, we really need to do our own. And that's where Itemware started. And so we started development back in 2015, and in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, which is on the bottom there, was the first full implementation. They've been running since 2017. Now, they're tracking 130,000 IT assets in over 20 buildings in 6 states, 180 floors. Their real benefit is constant inventory of those assets. And they're saving $1.2 million a year, and those are their numbers, the U.S. government published, on what it's saving them. But you don't have to be that big. I mean, looking then at Concurrent Electric, what happened was one of our partners here in the U.S. said, can you take your system and mobilize it, put it on work trucks? We said, sure. And so Concurrent was the very first implementation. We put it on 57 bucket and derrick digger trucks. During the implementation, as the operators understood the importance and the impact of the solution, they started asking to be next to be installed. And the install really doesn't take long. It took about, it takes between 4 and 6 man hours per truck to put it in. But the end result is their tool loss has been nearly zero. And in the process, they recovered about $175,000 of excess tooling. And that was huge, right? That more than paid for the installation. And then after that, it's on ongoing savings. What happened was, there was one guy who needed a crimper and just kept grabbing them. He had 5 crimpers, and they're $3,000-$4,000 a piece, and it didn't happen. I mean, they recovered them all, and the fleet has been right-sized. Pike Electric is a very large infrastructure company here in the U.S. They do a lot through the southeast and along the Atlantic coast of the U.S. Their test case was using it initially on gas service vehicles, as in natural gas, where they are building lines. And they're working on it as a test before they figure out how to roll it out on 6,000. So 30 is a good test, but 6,000 is even better. And what they're doing is, in particular, besides the tool loss savings, we're giving them metrics for utilization. And that utilization information is helping them make sure that they don't have very expensive tools not being used. So that is a huge, if you think if you've got 6,000 heavy trucks and excess tooling, if you can kind of take the Concurrent and expand it from 57 to 6,000, you can just kind of visualize the savings and the return on investment.
Are you saying they used it to share across the fleet, critical tools, or
yes, that's what they'll do.
Not require that tool, so let's get it into the
right.
Does rather than buying more assets.
That is absolutely right. Because every one of the workers wants that $5,000 widget, right, on their truck. But by using the utilization data, because we know when an item is on the truck or not on the truck, how long it's been off the truck, we can tell them that tool has never been off the truck, so why does he have it, right? Or if you have, usually in the U.S., there's teams of 3, a derrick digger and a couple of buckets going down a line. Well, all 3 of them don't need that special tool.
Right.
They need the standard tools, but they don't need that extra widget that's $5,000. So huge savings.
Yeah, exactly. So with these, Chuck, what are some of the other value propositions that they experience? You mentioned here 54% reduction on the trademark office deployment. Tell us more about that real value proposition for the software.
Well, again, so if you let's talk about in the mobile world,
Yeah.
in work truck.
Yeah.
Here in the U.S., in the electrical utility industry,
Yeah.
there's about 100,000 trucks, heavy trucks, derrick diggers and bucket trucks. So very large trucks. Their average value of tools is about $30,000 US.
Yeah.
And contractor loss rates for tools, believe it or not, is 30% per year or more. And I've had several people confirm that number, including, Pike is doing heavy analysis on utilization.
Yeah.
That also includes loss.
Yeah.
And so they validated that number as well. Well, if you think about the math, that means nearly $1 billion worth of tools a year are quote unquote lost. Now, are they all left by the roadside? No. Workers may walk off with them, or people come by and take them in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
We can alert on that as well, and tie into other systems. So
the first two applications that we have here, obviously the mobile asset tracking.
Right.
Can you speak to the configuration of those vehicles? I assume that you've got all vehicles, different sizes, different tray sizes, different boxes, bins that sit on the vehicle itself. How did you handle that variations across the fleet?
So you did a very good job explaining how we install it, right? So it really is engineering to pick the right antennas for a given box or situation or truck bed, and then our software takes over from that. As you said, we could go down to the box or bin level, but usually people just want to know, is it on the truck? Because that drill or that crimper or whatever may have been in box 1 this time, they used it and they threw it back in box 2. So we just care that it's on the truck, right? And give me the green thumbs up that everything that I have is accounted for me, or a yellow thumbs up saying it's on one of my trucks, right? It's one of my coworkers' trucks. Somebody has my tool.
Yeah.
It's not lost.
Gotcha.
Or if I've got that red thumbs down, okay, I better go find it, right? So that is a huge thing for the users. And again, it's productivity, it's safety, because we're tracking dates. You can put in for like rubber goods or AEDs, the automatic defibrillators, or fire extinguishers, things that need to be inspected and certified. We have the capability and the fields already, so that we can alert on those dates in advance and notify the operator and or supervision at multiple levels, regardless, of who it should be. And so
biggest truck
and the alerts can either be through SMS or email, or they show up on the dash of the truck.
Gotcha. Biggest truck configured, number of different compartments on a truck.
The biggest one we've done has 17 big compartments. It's one that is normally used in for electrical utility company.
Yes.
They have very, very big trucks with lots of bins.
Yep.
And so, yes, extra antennas, extra multiplexers. The standard configuration is about 9 bin box. That tends to be the norm.
Yeah.
9 to 10 or 11. And on the service vehicles, like
sorry,
the service body.
Yeah.
Service body, like one of the people participating makes, could be as few as, a half a dozen. But again, it's engineering combined with the software, combined with the right tags to get the results that we need.
I think that's, you hit on it there, right? We've both been in RFID for a long time. We know how difficult it is to achieve perfection because sometimes the technology is too good. The scattering of the RF can be out of control. So can you speak to those applications, whether it's an open van or tray, whether it's an enclosed delivery van with open space, or whether it's that large vehicle with number of different bins on it? How do you control that? It's not all in the hardware, I dare say.
Well, no. I mean, so two things.
Yeah.
We tend to take advantage of the physics, right? So if you think of most toolboxes, they're metal.
Yeah.
And so they have a problem. They become what's known as a Faraday cage. So if you're using a Bluetooth beacon or something like that, the signal's not going to get out of the bin.
Yeah.
Or if they're RFID and we're using passive UHF RFID, we're using the physics of the box to get a good read because the signal, the RF, is bouncing around inside the box and we get a good read.
Yeah.
We do control the power of each antenna individually.
Right.
So you have to do tuning. That's where, again, our expertise and the expertise of you and your team combined with the software's capabilities is critical to success. That combined with the proper tag selection. And again, we've gone through a number of manufacturers' tags. We know who works best on certain things. We've got prototypes running all the time and always testing new tags.
Yeah.
And again, the technology is agnostic. So whether it's passive UHF RFID or barcode or even BLE, beacons, and cellular tags, we've used them all.
So let's drill down to the US Patent and Trademark Office briefly, and then we might open it up to the floor a little bit more, please. If you can say we've taken from the truck, the vehicles. What about in office, in location?
So that is an excellent application of the system.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, for the Patent and Trademark Office, we're doing choke point monitoring, right? So we've set up fixed infrastructure, and as the items pass by, they see them, and so they're doing a constant inventory. In retail environment, we'd call that a cycle count, right? Always doing a count. Well, when it's not seen for a certain period of time, let's say a laptop's been sitting in a corner for more than 30 days, the operations people get a notice through our alert system, and they go and with a handheld version, which I was going to show on my laptop if it would not have been a mess, and go and do a scan of that item. So again, we have native iOS, native Android apps that work in concert with our web-based software. And again, we work on cloud, so whether it's the fixed infrastructure or the mobile infrastructure, if connectivity isn't there, it comes back together when it gets connectivity. So we've been able to even work in special environments within the U.S. government in what we call disconnected mode. We load up the data we need, and we can go into a special area, do the inventory of items, come back out, synchronize the data, and away we go.
I like that. That's a great legacy system to have, essentially, if you're working into high security areas, or indeed if you're working in areas without communications, which in Australia can be many due to the vast land that we have, as
right.
you do in the US.
And again, on the mobile implementations, we have a complete system on the vehicle.
Yeah.
We're storing the data, and we store local the information about that team or that truck, so that even if it's not connected, the operator still knows that he's got stuff or he doesn't have stuff.
Thanks, Chuck. I really appreciate that, and nice recovery after the early areas. But hey, technology is a thing. But essentially, in summary, I think the slide up on the screen now really looks at those tool loss impacts. It looks at tool utilization, compliance, and safety. We are seeing this utilized across a plethora of applications, from emergency vehicles through to electrical and service vehicles in the oil and gas mining market. And thank you for everyone who has joined here today to learn some of those benefits. And we might open it to the floor. If there's any questions, please throw them in the chat, and we're happy to to review. Price range, I think that's the first one, right? And that's what we're working on really hard to optimize this for the Australian market so that we can really make this accessible. So we are modifying the US solution to optimize for the Australian market, so it will work in the smallest of work vehicles through to the largest. So the range that we're looking at the moment is around the 15,000 to 30,000 mark, depending on the size of the vehicle, which can vary dramatically. It's the refining of that whole solution set is something that with our dealer partners across the country, where we're really getting down to the point where we're educating people on the install, we're educating people on the service and maintenance, and we have a team that will support that as well in the back end. So that price model is really being honed in, and it can only get better. I think from a tag perspective, we've seen reductions in the tags over the last 24 years that I've been involved in RFID. I was telling someone yesterday that we used to pay a fortune for these things, and the prices have come down dramatically. It all depends whether it's a label on some of the soft items that are being tagged, which are, in the matter of cents and can be printed and encoded, through to heavy metal tags that are rugged and are able to take the lifetime of the asset and handle that environment, plus also be read in an RFID environment. Let's have a look. One of the next questions. Chris, how could Item Aware assist in the initial audit process when a customer is at ground zero and trying to work out what they have? Chuck.
If I may?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Chris, that's a good question. And again, the system knows all the assets that you have in your company, if you will, and you can assign them to a vehicle, and either with the display on the dash for the work operator, or using the handheld, or using fixed infrastructure. Let's say you have a tool room or a warehouse. Instantaneously if the items, what your status of your items is. Do you have everything? So does that answer your question, Chris?
The only thing I'd add what Chris types in there is I think with any asset management deployment, you really have to start with an audit of assets and inventory and an onboarding of those assets into the system. So that's your ground zero point, where you have to actually conduct that position. So you could do that as part of a stock take. You could do that as a implementation process. But what I found with all the implementations I've done over the years is you start with a ground zero base. You then tag your items and bring them into the platform. Now that's just a process that needs to be done once, and then they're in, and then you tag assets as they come in and out, and you manage those in the platform as they come in and out of the platform. So that's good asset management.
Now that I understand the question a little bit better. So, and again, obviously you set up the asset and asset types and part numbers and things like that ahead of time. And as you implement an asset or bring it into the system, it's a quick scan and association of either the barcode or the RFID. And in our case, we encode a barcode on the RFID tag that's the same as the RFID tag ID.
Gotcha.
So that they're the same, and so it's really scan or do a drop down menu, pick that item and scan and associate the item. So it's a very quick process. When we've been doing the trucks, we've been doing the tagging the items. Now the requirement ahead of time is that the customer provides us a list of the part numbers, manufacturers, what they think they already have. And then we always find that they have stuff that they didn't know they have, and we add it on the fly. And again, that's the beauty with the handheld application, iOS or Android, or even the web-based. I can run it on my iPad. and to add and configure and do things on the fly. I mean, that's the key, right? And then doing inventories as a result, right, becomes essentially when the truck is fired up, or actually most of the times we wire the systems right into the battery so that it's always on.
Yeah.
Because that's when it's effective. If not, you're not reading all the time. So with an always on, it's always doing that cycle count, that inventory. You always know it's red, yellow, or green.
Yeah, I think the other aspect, we're seeing a lot of lithium-ion batteries come into vehicles these days as well.
Mm-hmm.
You and I have discussed that as an option as well to wire them into the onboard battery, which is they're pretty much full-time these days with the battery.
We've also done some solar panels.
Yeah,
to keep the charge up, right?
Yeah, and that in Australia, we've looked at deploying those in some remote locations where power is not necessarily available so easily. So from that perspective, works well.
We've also been putting them on the trucks themselves.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, you just need a 100-watt panel.
Yeah,
and it does a lot of work for you, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, I from what I've heard about Australia, a lot of sunshine there, but it's the same case in our south and southeast. Lots of sunshine, so it works really well.
So one of the other questions there was RFID has been around for a long time, but doesn't seem to have taken off in Australia. Australia, why? I don't know about that. I mean, essentially, I think it was about 50 billion RFID tags sold worldwide this year. Is the estimate, or similar to that. A large amount of those are in apparel, but it's a huge application in supply chain, and I think we have seen it adopted in retail a lot in Australia. Some of the early applications in particular mining in this country were done back in the early 2000s and continue to be utilized and managed. So I don't know, Chuck. RFID, yeah.
Well, and again, we've got to kind of do some delineation, right? Most people, when they think about RFID, they think about passive UHF RFID, what Scott was just referring to in the apparel and supply chain world. But other RFID applications have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
If you think about it, NFC is actually RFID, right? Yeah. It's just very short range RFID.
Yeah, in here.
So it really hasn't, it's been around and people just don't know. Now, specifically passive UHF RFID has really taken off in the retail supply chain, in particular due to mandates like from Walmart and Macy's and others in the U.S. What's the company in Europe? The H&M, right?
Well, it's Zara. It's large department stores, retailers in Australia are using it as well. You just don't hear it, even in Cotton On stores. You're seeing that in everyday management of inventory, reading garments on the shelf.
So my take is that it's actually accelerating adoption because of the high cost of labor and supply chain issues. So people have gotten more efficient using RFID or other AIDC technologies to get those profit or handle those shortcomings that we're having right now, again, with labor, with cost of labor, cost of goods, supply chain.
Yeah, I think the third question there we already answered, which is about the amount of data and the scattering of RFID, and that's where the item aware solution caters for that extremely well, both in the engineering of the solution and in the software itself, which is something that can't be discarded in an RFID solution. It's really a trilogy of the tag, the reader antenna, and the software itself. So look, on that note, unless there's any other questions, I want to thank you, Chuck. I know we had a rough start to that one, but came out all right.
Yeah.
these things happen. And we will make this video available to participants to view at a later date. Of course, with 4impact, we talk about the level of data services that are available on the back, the level of data. With 4impact, we also do a lot of work in the merging of data into one single source viewing platform. So data streaming using Confluent as a system to manage that data. And certainly in the IoT world, in the RFID world, that's something that 4impact is very capable of supporting in the field. So large fleets and streaming of that data into one consolidated management platform is something that we excel in at 4impact. So I want to thank you, Chuck. I want to thank everyone for joining. And if we can assist you in any of your deployments, please let us know.